Good evening. The City of Peabody Zoning Board of Appeals meets tonight in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40A, and other applicable laws. Excuse me. Tonight's hearing will be conducted in the following manner. The Secretary will read the legal notice or state that such notice has been waived. All applications will be heard in the order they were received in the City Clerk's office or as otherwise designated by the Chair, and we are having a out of order this evening. We are going to hear number 1, and then we're going to float right over to, on the special meeting, we are going to hear the continued application for Tanright Residences. We're going to hear that as our number 2. Everything else will be heard in the order after that. The petitioner or petitioner's representative will present the subject application to the board. The chair may limit the length of all remarks. All parties in interest will be given an opportunity to speak in favor or in opposition, and this is where I stop. And please raise your hand if you have never been here before, if this is your first. Okay. Just over here? So this is how it works. When you're called, whatever number you are, you'll come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, tell us why you're here. You know, we have it in front of us, but we need to hear it from you and your reasons why. And remember, you're here for dimensional relief, so we need to hear specifically why you want to add on whatever. Then we'll question you a little bit. We'll see if there's anybody in the audience to speak in favor or in opposition. If you have any opposition neighbors, you can come back up and discuss that. Then we take a vote, yes or no, and you'll hear from Carla tomorrow, and you're all set, hopefully. I say this every meeting. So, you know, we can't approve everything. And this is a very fair board. I'd like to say we're the fairest of them all, which I believe we are. But if we approved everything, there would be no need for us. So, within reason, we listen to you. We understand what you're here for. If you want something completely out of the world, you know, you just want to build right up to your neighbor's lot line, and your neighbor doesn't want, you know, that you're asking for too much. You get what I'm trying to say. So we listen, we take into consideration everything, and then we make a vote. The decision then is typed and filed with the city clerk. Once the decision is filed with the city clerk, there is a 20-day appeal period. In compliance with the open meeting law, this hearing is also being recorded by our clerk, Ms. Carla McGrath. When you're at the microphone, please speak directly into it. Make sure the red light is on and you only press it once. Cell phones should be silenced, and unless you have an emergency, obviously, you can, that's fine. And the other thing I want to say is, other than happy holidays to all, we do not want to listen to your neighborly complaints. I say this every meeting, and I'm going to say it again because some people don't get it. We don't want to hear about spotlights in your backyard, leaves falling from the trees into your pool, loud music being played till 3 a.m. You're here for dimensional relief. The board is very diligent on making their site visits. We know what the laws, we've been doing this long enough. Please don't get up to the podium and try to tell us our job. We already know that. And I'm talking too much, so I'm just going to get right to the point, and we're going to go to number 1, which is a continued application of Attorney Jason Panos for 25 Farm Ave.
Good evening, members of the board. For those of you celebrating, Happy Hanukkah. My name is Jason Panos, practicing law at 246 Andover Street, Peabody, Massachusetts, for the record. I'm joined by Tony Capicetti of Hayes Engineering, who's been reviewing the various materials that have come through on this matter, and also the project principal, Michael Weiss. Here we are again. It's December 19th. This matter's been before the board since June. There are parallel matters going on, as you know, with the Conservation Commission, but they're independent of this board. As you know, this board is charged with enforcing the zoning ordinance. However, progress at the Conservation Commission has been used to determine J.D. Raymond's good faith in eliminating the zoning violations associated with their illegal uses for which they have been cited by the building commissioner in the letter being the matter before you tonight. J.D. Raymond filed their notice of intent application with the Conservation Commission in April of this year. The application was peer-reviewed, noting extensive deficiencies on July 12th by Horsley Witten, the city's peer reviewer. J.D. Raymond then submitted additional materials, in response, resulting in another peer review letter, which was issued in September 16th from the city's peer reviewer, Horsley Witten. J.D. Raymond waited another month and asked in October for a continuance at the Conservation Commission through December. The deadline for their submission for that December 15th hearing to submit their supplemental materials was November 30th at noon, which was extended to 3:30. The filing was not received or submitted until 5 o'clock after the close of business at City Hall. And don't take my word for their late submission. By email from the Conservation Commission agent, Lucia Del Negro, of December 2nd, to which Madam Chair and Ms. McGrath were copied. I quote, "Hi all, I just spoke with Chairman Lazarus. Since the paperwork was submitted past the deadline, the item will need to be continued until the January hearing, a matter for which they have had through November 30th, more than 2.5 months to prepare and submit." In short, there was no reason for them to wait till past the 9th hour to make that untimely submission to the Conservation Commission, which resulted in another delay. And what makes that a little more annoying, disturbing, use the word that suits you best, is they came before this board on November 21st, last month, fully aware of what the timelines were and giving you the promise that everything would be submitted timely so that it could be reviewed and so that the matter could proceed before the Conservation Commission timely, and we would be in a position to know at least where they were heading with their notice of intent application. We cannot do that until January 11th of next year. So, as a result, as I indicated, the Conservation Commission continued the matter to their January 11th agenda because they were late. This matter was supposed to be heard and dispensed with on December 15th, last week. Yet another month goes by with more excuses. We're still going through their late submittal materials to the Conservation Commission. They are extensive. Peer review has been received. We're going through that. Through the engineers, I'm not qualified to do that, but I will note something glaring that I am qualified to point out, and that is their as I indicated, glaring misrepresentation in their Conservation Commission filing that they are zoning compliant. And when I read that, I found that galling. Because if they are zoning compliant, then we have no reason to be here. We had no reason to be here since June. They are not zoning compliant, yet they've made that representation to the Conservation Commission. So, given the late filed supplemental materials, where they were aware of the timelines and the deadlines, given the misrepresentations, which is just more of the same of what we've seen, given the fact that they never even withdrew their August letter to this board indicating that they were going to reserve their rights to determine what zoning compliant meant when they knew, piggybacked with this representation to the Conservation Commission that they're zoning compliant, I would just do what this board has precedent, and that is to suspend all of their illegal zoning activities until they are zoning compliant before all applicable appeals. You've done this before related to adjacent property, and I think it's appropriate here. This applicant before the Conservation Commission, they need to be held accountable, and they need to have, in my opinion, in our opinion, they need to have their feet held to the fire. And that's all I need to say on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Panos. Are we going to hear from, yep.
Thank you. Good evening. Kim Crowa for JD Raymond. First, I just want to correct a few of the things that were just presented with respect to the deadline. Our understanding of the deadline was November 30th. This is a little bit of an unusual circumstance because Brendan Callahan is the acting conservation agent for this file, not Lucia Del Negro. So we had been in discussions with Brendan. The deadline's November 30th. Never any indication of a time frame. The initial filings are due at noon according to the schedule. What happened during that day is Attorney Panos and Ms. Del Negro were emailing back and forth about this deadline of noon and then 3:30. Nobody sent us any emails. Our engineer talked to Mr. Callahan that afternoon, said, yes, the submissions are coming in today. We submitted them at 5. Never heard anything about this supposed deadline issue until Friday, when a conversation was had between Ms. Del Negro and the Conservation Commission, and they said, we want to continue it, and Attorney Panos correctly read that email. We were on the hearing last week on Wednesday, in case there were any questions or comments from the commission, in case they wanted a presentation. They filed a motion to continue, no discussion.
Do you mind if I just interrupt?
Of course.
So you had a deadline of November 30th, but you filed at 5 o'clock. City Hall closes at 4. So anything that would be submitted after that would go to the next day.
We submitted at the end of that day, which was how we understood. The engineer did have a conversation with Mr. Callahan that afternoon and was aware of when we were filing and never raised any potential issue. And with that, that's just the way that we understood it. And so we're in this situation now. I understand the commission did hear a motion to continue, did the continuance, no discussion made. During that time, the peer review was received by the city December 13th, so prior to the Conservation Commission hearing. We were sent it on December 15th. We've reviewed the peer review, and most of the comments relate to operations and the O&M plan, how we're going to manage the site after the stormwater improvements are put in. They're not major comments. Our engineer has looked at them. The next filing deadline is Wednesday of this week. So we will be sure to be timely for the day of time submitting also. I had an email correspondence with Ms. Delnegro after that with respect to the deadlines, and just said, I basically apologize, but if we had known that this conversation was happening during the day, we could have submitted it. We had everything ready. We were just sort of proofreading during the end of the day that day and never expected that to be an issue. But I understand we are where we are. So the commission did continue it January 11th. That does still track the deadline that was discussed at the November hearing before this board, where Mr. Callahan had said he expected that the commission would vote in January. Based on the scope of the peer review, I do expect that we'll be in that position to have a vote in January. And just to respond to the zoning question that was raised by Attorney Panos, the context of that, the peer reviewer in some of their comments asked for updates with respect to various compliance on the site and asked whether or not the stormwater improvements that we were planning were compliant with zoning, and we provided an update for that. So it was not any response one way or another with respect to the special permit, but it was based on the layout of the site and the different improvements that are being planned. So I would ask just that this be continued until January the way that it had been discussed in November, because I do believe we are still on the track that we had discussed at that November hearing.
Thank you. This has been, I've said it before and I'll say it again, this has been way too long. This has been continued after continued and excuses after excuses, and I want to know if somebody else on the board would like to speak on this.
I'm happy to speak on it. I think I spoke on it last time. So this dates back to the original Al Tallarico letter about this is an illegal activity. It won't cease yet. He was not making a determination at that time that an enforcement action needed to be occurring. However, that was based upon good faith. And we've been questioning or discussing good faith for the most part, every single meeting we've had since then, dating back to those August letters. So I understand that deadlines can be missed. I understand that mistakes can be made. We've all been there. It's all happened. But we were pretty clear, I think, last meeting about what our expectations were and what we wanted to come before us this meeting. So maybe it's just me, but if it was me and I had a deadline and where a board said, if you don't meet this deadline, we're going to consider a cease and desist or suspension of activities, I wouldn't be proofreading and waiting on that day till the minutes before the deadline. I would be having that thing filed at least a day in advance just to make sure, God forbid, there's an issue. And I think that does lead a lot of credence to what Attorney Panos has been saying for 8 months at this point, that I'm not going to be the judge or the arbiter about who's right, who's wrong with respect to the actual occurrences over there, or who's lying, who's telling the truth, or what's happening in between. But there certainly does not seem to be good faith here, in my opinion. So, at least from my perspective, I'm going to be in favor of a suspension of activity and enforcing I guess a bifurcated enforcement would be my thought. So we'd be adopting the building commissioner's determination that a special permit needs to be applied for and received in order to make it a legal activity. But I guess we'd be declining or rejecting his portion of the letter in which enforcement action would not be occurring. Those are just my opinions. It's dragged on far too long, and I don't see what leads us to believe that it'll happen again in the next 5 to 7 days, and what will happen in January, February, March, April. And it is an illegal activity. It's been determined to be one, and I don't think we can sit around any longer.
So I agree with Stephen. I was just going to talk about the conditions of bifurcation and suspension of the activities. I do agree with all that. It does not impede with the petitioner's ability to continue to work towards compliance. So I agree, Stephen. I agree.
If I could, I believe, Stephen, I believe what you said about the letter is true. And when we first started this, my thoughts were that Mr. Talarico, being the building commissioner, wanted to handle it as he felt just and right, and I was willing to let him do that. But the problem is now that, for whatever reason, Mr. Talarico is no longer employed for the city, so I really don't know what he had in mind. And I really don't think it's fair to ask Mr. St. Pierre to jump in the middle of this when he's probably been on employee half-time for about 2 weeks. So I think we've been more than fair. I think we made it very clear that there was a date at our last meeting that we expected things to roll around. And so I think the time is up. And I think it's time that we should do something and take some action on this. Thank you.
Okay. Let's have a motion to close the public hearing, right? Nobody else that would like to speak on this, is there? I wouldn't think so. Okay.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
And then I'll make the following motion. I'll make a motion to, I suppose it'd be a motion to approve Attorney Panos' administrative appeal by way of a bifurcated enforcement of the building inspector Al Talarico's prior determination, which would be 1, to determine that this is an illegal activity in violation of our zoning laws, and then 2, that enforcement action will now be taken place by way of suspension of all illegal activities with respect to that property. And then I guess a request that the current building inspector take whatever steps may be necessary to assure that that occurs.
I would, can I amend that just a little bit? Yes, please. So I would further state that all illegal activities have to cease and desist.
Yes.
And then this, it's a suspension of all zoning activities.
Yes, I would agree to that amendment.
Is that amendment? So the motion would be to suspend all zoning activities and cease and desist all illegal activities.
Until they come compliant?
Yes.
Conservation and city council approval.
Right.
Yes.
Roll call vote.
Keith,
Yes.
Barry. Yes. Chris,
Yes.
Stephen,
Yes.
Fran.
Yes. Okay. That's done. We are now going to go to the special business of continued application of Tan Right Residences. Once again, care of attorney Jason Panos.
Good evening. My name is Jason Panos, practicing law at 246 Andover Street, Peabody, Massachusetts. I'm joined by Tony Capichetti from Hayes Engineering, who's the project manager, and Nick Ambiliotis, who's representing the project principals. We've been working closely with Bob Langley as he has administered the peer review. He's been doing a very good job. He's been very diligent, but we are still waiting for a significant amount of peer review to come back on this. And to be clear, it's a complicated project, as you know. And so I'm, in a sense, very happy that the peer review is being given the careful attention that it is normally given in a 40B context. So tonight, very briefly, we did get stormwater peer review back. Tony's going to give you a very brief update on where that's at. We're going to have a full report in response to stormwater at your next hearing, and hopefully we'll have, I guess we've been promised some peer review or all of the remaining peer review back in the first week in January. So we should be in a position February, March to really hopefully move toward closing out that peer review, figuring out what it is. So if it pleases the board and through the chair, if Tony could come up and give us a brief update.
Very briefly. Tony Capichetti, Hayes Engineering, 603 Salem Street, the project engineer. As I stated last time, we've worked through most of the stormwater comments. We've been dealing with one of the project abutters across the street who has an off-site flooding problem and looking for ways to alleviate that. We had the good fortune of some rain this past week, so we were able to go out there during the rainstorm and observe his situation. So we're going to make some modifications to the design to help alleviate that flooding and try and connect some of that drainage back into the compensatory flood storage we have under our parking lot, which will displace some of that puddle that occurs in front of Century Tire. I'm not going to say it's going to solve every storm, but the lesser thunderstorms that come through that cause that quick flash flood will hopefully be able to alleviate that problem, which will go a long way with the abutter. Beyond that, I hope to have a second response from Horsley Witten, and then we'll deal with the water and sewer. And the consensus is we don't think we're going to have a water and sewer problem out there, but it's in everyone's best interest to have a peer review stating that before we go forward. So I thank you for your time, and happy holidays to all of you.
And in close, thank you very much for moving this off, taking this out of weather rather, and happy Christmas to all. Thank you.
We need a motion to accept the correspondence dated November 22nd, 22, extension to request to January 31st. All in favor?
Second. Aye.
Okay. So now we are going to continue this till our January 23rd meeting. May I have a motion?
So,
Second.
All in favor?
aye.
Okay, great. Now we're on to the original number 2, which is now number 3, of 73 Bartholomew Street. Bartholomew Street? Do we have the contractor for 73 Bartholomew Street? Would we- We're going to, the contractor is not here this evening. We are going to continue this till next month, which will be January 23rd. May I have a motion for that?
I'll make that motion, but I would like it noted that this will be his one chance.
Chris, you got something to say? Did Chris have something to say?
Okay, the neighbors are here. We'll, right.
I didn't see that.
I need a motion to accept the correspondence dated December 2nd, 2022, from Michelle Fitzpatrick, and 12/3/22 from Inspector Dan Terenzoni.
So moved.
All in favor?
Second. Aye.
Okay, we are now, we still are going to continue this till January 23rd, but we are going to hear from the neighbors since you are here tonight.
Michelle Pulio, 77A Bartholomew Street. To be honest, I was looking forward to hearing your take on everything. My opinion is my opinion, but I would assume you had an opportunity to look inside and to sort of maybe at least understand my concerns. Whether or not you agree with them or not is, I guess, another matter, but at least understand my concerns.
So we really can't talk on that this evening, but it is noted that you did show up, and we'll discuss more next month. Merry Christmas. Thank you. Thank you.
So I think we're going to move to continue to the next meeting.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now we are on to
3.
number 3, which is right in front of me, and it is
I gotta read this one.
32 Summit Terrace.
Number 3 on tonight's agenda is the application of Stephen and Karen Murphy for a variance from the provisions of zoning ordinance 2020 as amended Section 7.2 as it applies to the premise known as 32 Summit Terrace in Peabody, Massachusetts. Petitioner seeks a variance for a proposed addition and requires relief to right side yard where 15 feet is required and 7 feet is proposed. Rear yard where 35 feet is required and 28 feet is proposed. The property is located in an R1A zoning district.
Thank you for hearing me. My name is Stephen Murphy. I live at 32 Summit Terrace in Peabody. The reasons, my wife and me and my children live in a 4-bedroom cape. And our main reason for installing this addition is that, not to be, say something bad, is that my mother passed away 2 years ago, and that was one place where my family and relatives gathered to entertain or meet up with people. And my mother-in-law passed away last year in January. So we don't have a place where we can gather for both families. So we want to expand our property to and put in a larger kitchen, a dining room, and an entertainment room. This is only going to be in the back. And why we waited so long to put this in right now is I first had to make sure that I could get my loan. I got the loan. Now I'm going through the process of now applying for the application. The house is 3 feet from the property line as it is right now, and we're just going to be putting it in the back, and we're just coming into the coming out, and we're it's supposed to be 15 feet, but we're 7 feet short. It's the same thing with the back. But the back is actually, there is a hill. So it actually goes up. So I'm just kind of saying it's kind of weird for that 35 feet, but we're 7 feet short, but it's mostly a hill. And why we did not move the house, move it so we could not have a variance is that we would be taking up most of our side yard. And we want to keep a little bit of our yard. And that's the main reason why we're trying to get this addition and where we're putting it. And thank you for hearing me, and if you have any questions.
It appears to me that there's been a lot of dimensional relief in this neighborhood. This is one of the least infringing on property lines. I didn't get a chance to take a look at it. I don't know if anyone's familiar with it, but if there's a hill on the other side, and that's on the right side. Yep, okay. Yeah, I don't have a problem with it.
No questions, comments? Anybody from the audience to speak in favor? In opposition? The matter is before the board.
Move to approve.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Yes.
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 Yes, you have been approved. Thank you very much. You're welcome. It's really not that funny. It's really not that funny. Looks like we are at 128 Newbury Street.
Thank you very much. Members of the board, my name is John Kelty. I'm an attorney. I have offices at 40 Lowell Street here in Peabody, Mass., and I represent the Maple Multifamily Land SELP, who are the applicants for a 40B approval at rear 128 Newbury Street here in Peabody, Mass. This matter, by way of background, this matter was first filed on October 7th, 2021. That plan that was filed at that time consisted of 220 units. It had parking for 345 cars. It was on 7.7 acres. The property is all located in R1 zoning district. Of the 220 units, 98 were intended to be one-bedrooms, 87 two-bedrooms, 24 three-bedrooms, 55 affordables, which represents 25%. All water, sewer, power connections in conjunction that were all filed with that first set of plans, which did reflect 220 units. On or about November 1, 2021, the board claimed safe harbor. By May 16th of 2022, and further notice of public hearing was put out. We had a public hearing. On 6/2/22, the safe harbor, what appeared to be, in our estimation, a denial. Any denial was retracted, and a public hearing was held on 6/6/22. And we moved forward at that time with 180 units, and we have now filed, which will be the 180 units, which is currently before you, consists of 7 studios, 66 one-bedrooms, 87 two-bedrooms, 23 bedrooms. There are 310 parking spaces now. There are 45 affordable units intended to be set aside. And with the decrease in the number of units, we have created more green space. We were advised early on in this process that we would be asked to provide as thick and extensive a greenbelt area between ourselves and to the west, our neighbors who live on Cardigan Road. And we were able to accomplish that and have filed a plan which shows an extremely extensive, very thick, somewhat luxurious, if you will, greenbelt that exists in the original open space that we were providing, and that buffer has now deepened, meaning it's wider with respect to the area between the edge of our parking lot and our neighbors' properties at Cardigan Road. There have been hearings since that original filing. There have been hearings on meetings on June 6th, July 18th, August 15th, September 18th, October 16th, November 20th, and now this evening. During that time, we have submitted all of our plans to the 4 groups that have been conducting peer review for not only this project, but all of the 40B projects that have appeared before the city. We have engaged World Tech to do peer review of traffic. Weston and Sampson is doing our wastewater and water availability. Horsley Witten, stormwater drainage and environmental. And lastly, Ty and Bond, is doing the wastewater. And Weston and Sampson speaks to the issue of water supply, availability of water, and the water availability at this particular site. We have submitted all of our plans to the peer reviewers. We have been responded to by our peer reviewers. We believe that we are at a point where Mr. Langley will be providing for your next meeting our closeout letters, all of the issues, including one that was raised this morning about the creation of a new line servicing this property and the extension of a larger line through this property. We've embraced every suggestion, fixed anything that was a typographical or Scrivener's error. Those have all been repaired. We've got on the board right now a status of where we are in all our peer reviews, and we are in a position where we believe that for the next meeting, we will have our closeout letter from Mr. Langley, who is conducting the peer review for this board. We are expecting that there'll be no closure to this public hearing this evening, inasmuch as we're still awaiting that final closeout letter from Mr. Langley. We would like to discuss actually beginning to discuss a decision. You have an extension that takes us to March 20th, 23. That is already in your possession, was filed some weeks ago, and we would expect our closeouts right after the first of the year so that they'll be available for the January 23rd meeting. From my standpoint, I'm hopeful that we can ask you to close the public hearing on January 23rd if there are no other matters that are pending before the council, before this board. And we would hope that inasmuch as the decision will be drafted in conjunction with the efforts of your attorney, Damon Seligson, we like permission to begin to discuss our decision and circulating a decision for the consideration of the board. Perhaps that would be available for January. If not, certainly whenever it gets done, we could begin to discuss that. And we're happy to go through our presentation and the peer reviews, if you'd like, in greater detail. There was nothing that was earth-shattering in our peer reviews. There was a site visit in which the board looked at the roadway that will become the access to our apartment complex. We have promised, and our plans reflect the fact that there is no access to or from, not even an emergency vehicle access that opens out from our proposed condominium complex, apartment complex, I'm sorry, that extends out to Winona. There is no connection to Winona. That was a request of the board. And we have, as I said, provided a significant and very thick landscape buffer, and that sheet that reflects what the landscape buffer looks like is very detailed with respect to the size of the plantings that are intended to be put there. And that sheet reflects in great detail what our final proposal is with respect to that landscape buffer. I'm happy to turn the podium over to Bob Clark from Allen and Major, if the board sees fit to go on about the individual changes that have occurred as a result of peer review. Most of them are either Scrivener or sizing of pipes, et cetera.
Okay, that was a great presentation. However, there is no way that we're making any decisions in January. There's no way we're closing this public hearing in January. We don't have updated plans. We don't have peer review in front of us. We have to look over this. I was told that there were some plans passed in, and now there's more revisions. We don't have peer review in front of us. We don't have plans in front of us. I'm glad you're being proactive, but Attorney Kelty, but there is no way ever that this is going to be buttoned up or decided or close the public hearing in January. Probably not even February. We need to see paper, see things, and I was told today that something else came down the pike, and there's new plans that now still have to be made.
Which, yes, today's the 19th, and we were asked to make a revision by bringing a larger size line, and we're fine with that. We're happy to do that. We have asked that what would the board like, we asked through Carla, whether or not we would need to file 7 full-size copies of the plan again, or whether we could just give that one sheet that shows that change. We have filed plans that reflect all of these changes. We have shared
And
all
we
of...
need to see those. And we need to see those, and we haven't seen them.
I understand that, and we did file 7 copies of that plan last week. That apparently was too late for tonight's meeting. I understand that, but they're here, and they will be presumably distributed to the board between now and your January meeting. So, and we're only asking the single question on the only change in that set of plans that is, I think, downstairs, will be the one sheet that shows this water line change. So if we're able to swap out the one sheet, we will have all of your plans in their final stage as soon as you would like.
But the email that I got today from Mr. Baranski stated that the plans were going to be, the revised plans would be sent in, correct? So the plans that we have now that were supposed to be the final set have changed. I understand that it's only one page, but they have changed.
That's correct.
And so you will be submitting those to the board, correct?
Yes, but can I just swap out the one page, or?
That's fine.
All right, so,
But you know, just
so those you will have for distribution next week. And we'll circulate them around, and you've electronically been privy to every communication between our peer reviewers, our responses. Those responses have been reflected on this set of plans. So I'm not suggesting we change what you just said. I'm just saying we're in a position where we're going to be done next week.
just as a point, something that I want to see that I don't think anybody has seen, and it might just be trivial, but you had reported that you had the manifest for the soil that got taken away and it was clean soil. We would like to see that. I know you have it, and I hope you have it, but we also would like to see that.
Okay, I can provide you a letter. I cannot provide a manifest. I did use the word manifest, that we had one. That was brought onto the site as clean fill from Revere, from Mr. Caruso's land in Revere. And then when it was removed as clean fill and went back to Revere, but I'm happy to provide a letter that says that. Areas that people know now that they'd like to have me amplify upon, or
I know we're going to have to review the peer reviews and probably have a discussion on it at the next meeting, so there's no way we can close the public hearing, I think, until we have that discussion. So that's my only comment, yeah.
So I guess just for the next meeting, I guess the idea from at least I think from the board's perspective would be to have some kind of, it could be that it's up there, I just can't see the print, it's way too small, but some kind of summary, to at least a summary to identify what was proposed versus what the changes were, kind of like we'd seen some of the other ones, a paragraph by paragraph. This one here, we adopt it, we reject, and here's why.
so That is exactly how it's done in the discussion between ourselves and our peer reviewer. We repeat the question, answer it, and that correspondence has been shared with the board, certainly electronically, and is what you're asking essentially is combine those into another question answer so that it's a
I think so, because there's a lot of stuff on the share drive that's coming in that we have to parse through. And it's entirely possible if that was submitted electronically and we're so used to getting it in paper that we might have looked at it and said, okay, this is not what we think it is, because it's in by way of a back and forth communication instead of a bullet pointed summary. So I think something along those lines, they would make it a lot easier for us to parse through the communications.
So if we were to create that document as having gleaned all that information out of the four peer reviewers and supply that to you, you would want it as something on paper. And what would be the deadline for me to get that instrument to the Carla for you to be able to have that night?
As always, 10 days before the next meeting.
Okay. And your January meeting is January 23rd, so we've got till about the 10th or so.
And just as a point of clarification, if he's going to change that one page, then I'm going to need to provide you with the copies that you sent me on Thursday of last week. I can get that to you before you leave tonight?
Sure.
Okay. And then what about the larger size, the full-size copies? Are you changing out that one page as
Yep.
well? Okay. So I've already given one to Bob Langley, so I don't have that one to give you back, but I can give you back
We'll
the
just
other
give
two.
him the sheet. Yeah.
Okay. I'll give you the other two large copies as well as the 11 by 17, so you can switch that sheet out.
I can come over and pick them up tomorrow.
Okay.
All right.
Also need to,
Detail, I think that Member Zelotes has sort of addressed that by saying, regardless in a way of what happens this evening, it's still better for you folks and less cumbersome to be able to see this one summary document. Okay. It's 7, right?
Are you going to speak at all? Because there might be somebody in the audience that wants to speak.
No.
Okay, so then you can leave the podium, thank you.
through the chair.
Ryan, would you like to speak?
There's also the extension that needs to be accepted.
While we're waiting, we need to accept the extension. Do you want to read it?
Move to accept correspondence dated November 22, 2022, from Jack Kelty, and this is regarding 128 Newbury Street. And it is a request to continue stated as on November 21st, 2022, the board voted to continue the hearing in the above referenced matter to December 19th, 2022, pursuant to 760 CMR 56.053. The board's deadline to close public hearing is currently set to expire on November 16th, 2022. Accordingly, the applicant hereby agrees to extend the board's deadline to complete public hearing to March 20th, 2023, to coincide with the board's December meeting date.
All in favor?
Second.
Second.
Aye.
Yep. Fine, great. That's all approved. Brian Cox, congratulations.
Thank you. So Ryan Cox, 11 Hamrick Road, Peabody. So the question I have, the plans that are in front of you guys are dated in an email from 10/14/22. That was the first time you guys got 180 units. So I'm going to go by those plans. I do have one question pertaining to just showing one drawing to fix one error. I went through these drawings, and these are the ones that I'm going by. Drawing C001 still shows the use of gas. So we were told that that was going to be removed. It still is shown on the plan.
I stop you there? So the new plans that we're getting, we haven't seen them. You obviously have. Is that fixed? Is gas still shown on that? Okay, so we hope when we see new plans, you can see them too.
Okay, I would double check that. The other thing that I had a question about was the October meeting, if I remember correctly. Attorney Kelty said that, that they were not buying all the parcels and that some of the land had contamination. So my question also arose when we did the site visit for the billiards hall. If you take a look at that, drawing C108 shows drainage in front of the old pool hall. If you look at that, it also shows that that structure is to be raised. I brought that up. What is their plan with the old pool hall? Because when we met, when it was 220 units, we were told everything's going to be fresh, clean slate, and if you go by the drawings, that does not represent that. Also, if you take a look at drawing C103, it shows existing riprap swale. So, swale, whatever you want to call it, which abuts Winona Street. It also shows that in those plans that the retention pond is to remain. So my question is, what is your plan with the retention pond, and what will the neighbors of Winona Street be looking at? Do they plan on addressing all of those issues that was originally stated, or are we going by these plans which do not show that? So also on drawing C102, it calls for off-site parking. It calls for 310 provided space where 420 is required. That leaves 110 cars per the drawing. Where are those 110 cars going to park? If there's overflow, are they going to park on Winona Street?
And those are good questions, and that's why this board has to look at the plans that are going to be final and do exactly what you're doing. But it would be a waste of time almost for us to, not a waste of time for you because you're, and we know about this and we'll try to address it right now, but final plans are final plans, and then we go through it just as you have gone through. But, you know, it's to be quite honest, this has been a little bit of a disjointed presentation because of everything that's gone on. But obviously, you're bringing up good points. We'll try to get some of them answered tonight, more answered in January when we have a clearer vision, maybe even more in February. But just let me know when you're done, and we'll see what we can do.
No, I understand. You know, it isn't the final plans, and we've been told that many times. So I'm going by what is submitted to the city, and that's what I'm going through. And for Attorney Kelty to say to submit one page of just the stormwater, the water for the hydrants, I think there's a lot more errors, and I think that they should have to submit a full set of what they intend to do, because someone's going to come up here and say, oh, well, that's not that one. That was supposed to be in this one.
You know, when that happens, it just gets continued and continued and
And that's
continued
what's
till
been
it's
happening.
right.
So I think the board should ask for a complete set before next meeting. This is the first time that we've actually been able to talk about the plans.
So I believe we are going to have a full set of new plans. They're just going to take out, like, say, page 7 that's wrong and put in a new page 7. And you know you can call Carla and ask
I know.
her.
So with that said, all of these issues that I just brought up will not have been changed. Because they're only changing one drawing, which shows the,
No, because what has been passed in that we haven't seen yet is something brand new.
so there's new drawings since 1014?
Yes.
Okay.
And Attorney Kelty, maybe could you address some of this now? Attorney Kelty? What? I know that we should probably wait for the plans, but, so you did say that the gas on these new plans, that's all removed. And I am also concerned about how could you keep that, I don't even know how to say the word I'm looking for. Let's just, the billiard, the dilapidated, rat-infested, horribly-looking billiard. You did say that it was going to be raised, knocked down. Is that still part of your plan, even though you don't own that?
That's correct. It's the agreement between Trammell Crow, my clients, and Ralph Caruso's group are that building will be removed. If it's not removed, then my clients have the right to do so.
And so does that,
But it would not happen, I mean, we show it on our plans because it's an existing condition.
so I'm just wondering, board members, even though they don't own that, can that be a condition? We can't condition that, can we?
Well, I believe it was discussed at some point about legal rights to being able to raise that regardless of.
Attorney Kelty, don't you have that agreement with the other plot owner?
That's correct.
Yeah,
We do.
So can we have a copy of
Yeah,
that?
sure.
Yeah. Okay, so we would like to see a copy of that.
Sure.
Retention pond? Same situation. Explain same situation to me, please.
For the record, Bob Clark from Allen & Major. So the detention pond, the existing detention pond, as well as that building is off-site. So the drawings were shown. The intended situation is that both will be removed. It is not under our contract, but Trammell Crow does have the right to do it if they do not do it. So the drawings showed the building in the existing condition, the pond in the existing condition, and then the C-108 plan shows the off-site improvements that another group will be doing, but if they do not perform, Trammell Crow has the right to actually remove the building and deal with the detention pond. So they're okay if you make a condition that as such.
Deal with a detention pond.
They would need to drain it, stop any water being filtered or flown to that detention pond. The C-108 plans actually showed underground detention for the whole roadway coming from Route 1 to our development. And that drainage will be underground in pipes, and it takes all the surface water. We're not going to be discharging any water to that detention pond in our design. We have our own detention underground as well that's going to remain in place once we build it.
Through the chair, so is it then backfilled?
Yes, it would be removed and backfilled, correct.
Okay, does it, since it's not technically your property, once you, let's say, you raise the billiard hall, the old billiard hall, you deal with the retention pond area and stop the flow, backfill it, is that then an area that you continue to control, or is that once you've taken that action, that's the end of your legal rights to that property?
Mark, you want to talk about the legality of that?
Hi, Mark Baranski, Trammell Crow Residential, Newton Lower Falls. Our right, the land is owned by other parties. It is under their control. We have certain rights that we can act on if they don't do certain actions by the time we purchase the land. However, once we have done that work, once we have demolished, if we are to demolish the pool hall, sorry, and then do the infill of the retaining pond, the owner of that land has the right to do with it whatever they see fit. We have the right to improve it, we have the right to seed it afterwards and do certain things, but they can certainly transact that land, they can do whatever they want with that land within, what is allowed. And it's worth noting that the,
We need to go see where that is because I know I'm going to tell you something you already know, but I live across the street from a situation where there was a pond that's, fed by underground water, and they filled it. That doesn't, last forever.
it does if it's properly engineered. Yeah.
So I imagine, though, you wouldn't be getting, the plot owner would be getting permits for that, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So that would be permitted and then inspected.
Yeah, it would absolutely, it would be done to, it also has to be done, this also falls under MIPA. So the state is reviewing all this as well.
Through the chair, if you fill in or get rid of that pond, that detention pond, how does that affect the water coming from Route 1 where's that water go?
I'll defer to our civil engineer, but it's all been accounted for, it's all been calculated. It's been reviewed by land sellers, civil engineers. It's been reviewed by our civil engineers. And it's been reviewed by MIPA, and frankly, it's been peer reviewed in great detail. So I could not tell you the details, not my area of expertise, but I'm very confident that it has had more eyes than most projects have to ensure that it operates properly.
Okay.
So
It was, yes, it has been done.
it should, it better.
Yes,
If not, then we're going to ask for a lot more
The
information.
document that you've asked us to roll up, for example, with sewer, in which there's a question or a comment and a response by us, those documents are pretty much closed out, and as Attorney Kilty has said, we'll be looking for a closeout document, but those documents we can provide you with will go in great detail on many of these questions.
The riprap swale that abuts Winona.
There is no riprap swale that abuts Winona. There's some on the backside of homes off Winona.
Would you like to expand, no, you can't talk from your seat. I just want to make sure that we can clear this up.
So drawing C103 shows existing riprap swale. So that was my question. I need the drawings. I didn't bring a copy with me. No, where is that?
That is coming from the lot line back and on the
This is Winona.
property. That's
This is-
correct. That's Winona.
And that's the
This
retention.
swale
This is the retention pond.
That's correct.
That abuts Winona.
No, it abuts the parcels that are on Winona.
Yes,
It
I
is
understand.
not
So it-
physically on Winona. That is inaccurate.
Okay, so it's not physically on Winona Street. It abuts the neighbors that live on Winona Street, their backyard.
Correct.
Okay. So my concern is they focused all on Cardigan, make this property look beautiful. Winona Street is not going to change. All those neighbors are still going to look at this, what you call riprap swale, that abuts their properties.
Yeah, if I could speak.
Yep.
So as Mr. Cox knows, we've actually spent a great deal of time with those abutters on Winona. Those are some of the people that are most ardent supporters of the project because they've been the most adversely affected by the denuding of the site. They're aware of the design that has been proposed and are supportive of it. And in fact, I believe there have been letters by many of those residents that were submitted to this board.
So those drawings were submitted on 10/14. Are any of those letters from Winona saying that they approve the drawings from that date, or are these previous, which have now been changed? So my question is, they may have been on board, but after looking at the plans and understanding fully the intent and what they can and can't do, that may change. I'm not going to answer for them. I don't see any of them here speaking for it.
I don't have an answer, and we don't have an answer, and Carla doesn't have an answer, and I don't know if you have an answer.
I can only speak to letters that were submitted. The parties that submitted those letters are aware of what's going on. They may not be aware of the most updated details of the drawings, but I'm comfortable that they are aware of the vision and the intent. And if it pleases the board, we could probably request additional letters that specifically refer to CO 103 as a detail that they are in support of.
I don't know if I would like letters. I think that, I think at some point, the neighbors, say it again?
I would assume they would come here. I mean, seeking out letters, I'm not sure that's going to help.
I can attempt to respond. Bob Clark from Allen and Major. So what my understanding is that off-site detention pond was used primarily as a pumping pond for dewatering. And that is why the water sits there and exists today, because it's a depressed area. It's built up. The riprap swale that is being referred to is an off-site piece in this location. That riprap is there. What happened is that they would actually then pump the water out of that pond, and they would pump it onto that swale, and that was what was actually flooding out these neighbors on the site. I personally went and met with every single neighbor on this property for the last 2 years, over 6 meetings with Mark. And I can tell you from what we're doing, there's not going to be any water flowing back to those people's property. The pond will be removed, and Mark has already stated for the record that if it's not removed by the other party, that he has the ability contractually and legally to go and remove that pond. So once all those operations no longer exist, there's not going to be any water flowing to that detention pond, thus overtopping and then flowing down to that swale, then flooding out the neighbors. And I think for the record, there were several letters that did come in from the neighbors that were read into the record maybe 5 months ago that I do recall. The other thing that I will say is that we have a sign-off from Weston and Sampson on the water. We have a sign-off from Horsley Witten Group for the peer review, stating that we've addressed all their comments. The only item that was commented on today after Weston and Sampson gave their sign-off on the water was they would like us to tie the 6-inch water line behind Honeydew into the 8-inch line that's coming out to Route 1. So the only change from the plans from October was the water line coming out to Route 1. So that plan set that was done in October was a final plan set. Then they added the water line, and now they thus made the comment on making the connection. So when they're referring to the sheet that they would like to pull out of the package, because their intent was to give one final plan set, which was delivered, so they're going to remove that one sheet and replace that and tie in the water line. But you will have a full package, and then as the attorney mentioned, we'll have a bulleted list and call out each and every single thing that we've done to date, and also have one final package for you in paper copy before January 10th.
This isn't a hot hat area right now, right? no construction going on. There's no it's not a hard hat area. Would Attorney Kelty, would there be an objection instead of having another site visit to look at the pond that we individually go when we can before the next meeting to take a look at this pond?
You asked if
I
had an objection to site visit?
No, but instead of having a formal site visit, if we could just individually go when we can? Okay, all right.
I'd probably say with the caveat, because this is, we are buying this land. If we could be given some time slot, just approximate, not in great detail, so we can share that with the land sellers so they're aware. They do keep an eye on the property. Would probably like to know who's on the property. I couldn't hear, sorry.
I can't give an exact time.
I understand, but if you said, for example, the afternoon of December 25th, something like that.
We could do that by email.
Yeah.
We feel so-and-so's going out tomorrow.
Yeah, just general.
I do have one more concern. Ryan, you had said, you had questioned the parking spaces? That there's 310? And you said 420 is required? Is that what you have on a plan?
So drawing C102 shows off-street parking, shows 2 per unit required. There's 310, so 420 would be required, and that leaves 110 off-site. So my question is, where would those cars park?
You're looking at a plan that is at 220 units, and now we're down to 180.
Nope, that is the 180 that was submitted. That's the new plans dated 10/14 that I'm going by that was submitted for 180 the Friday before the Monday meeting.
Through the chair?
Yep.
When you're, are you looking, because I don't have that in front of me right this very moment, is it saying that they have a plan for 420 vehicles, or that's just saying that's what they would need to do it by right?
I'm just going by what it says. It says that two are required per a unit.
Right.
So that's 420.
Right.
They're providing 310.
Gotcha.
So there's an additional 110 that call for off-site parking.
Right, so typically how that, again, I wish I had the plan in front of me to look at it with you. But typically what that means is that's the required amount by zoning. And what they're looking to do is they're saying we only need 310 parking spots. That's all we're going to put on site. But again, that would come back when we see the formal peer review and those on the, and then we can pose that question. If there's off-site parking, if the 310 spots you have fill, what happens next?
Yeah,
Where do
that's
they
my
go?
concern.
Yeah,
Especially with it being on Winona Street.
40Bs. And once you fill it,
Yep.
since these lots tend to be smaller than they would normally be for a project of that size, where's the overflow go? Where can people park, and more importantly, where can't people park?
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. With regard to parking, that was addressed in the parking and traffic peer review, and you'll find when you receive that, and Mr. Langley has already reviewed it, that our proposed parking count is deemed to be sufficient for the amount of bedrooms and units on the property. We as a developer are very comfortable that the amount of parking we're providing is spot on for the amount of units and bedrooms we have on the property. Needless to say, if we don't have enough parking, we can't rent units, and that makes the property pretty unsuccessful. So we spend a lot of time thinking about that. Oftentimes, older municipal zoning codes have a preponderance of parking that many, frankly, cities and towns are moving away from and going to lower counts. This is probably more in line with what today's world is like. Thank you.
I do have one concern, question, whatever. So if and when this gets built, you then, I know you're from out, the main property people are from out of state. So no? Who maintains this?
It would be one of our partners who are based generally in downtown Boston with offices throughout Eastern Mass.
Do you know who that would be?
Don't know right now. No, it's so far
Would
out.
you know before we make a decision?
No, you don't typically select your property manager till about 6 months before your first CO.
Are there like three people
Lincoln
on a list?
Properties, Lincoln Property Management is the firm we've used on all our properties in Massachusetts.
Lincoln Properties.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So it looks like to address the rest of the questions, we're going to need the final plans and the peer review.
Right.
Then we can address these, so.
So we need a, Ryan, are you done for now? Okay. And anybody else? So we need a motion to continue this till January 23rd.
So moved.
Second.
Yes, we did. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's see what else we have. We have a, so we'll see you January 23rd. What do we have? The extension request from Attorney Vonzalides? I don't have that.
Okay, so, motion to approve on the matter of 29 Newbury Street, Attorney Anzalotis's request for an additional 6 months extend. What is it, Vonzalides?
Vonzalides.
Is it? He wrote, did I say Zalotis? Sorry,
Motion to accept and approve.
I need dinner.
Motion to accept and approve.
Motion to accept and approve correspondence.
Second.
All in favor? Okay. I also need to let everyone know that the appeal of 40 to 42 Endicott Street has been dismissed and all taken care of. At this point in time, our next meeting will be January 23rd. Merry Christmas, happy and healthy New Year, happy Hanukkah. I hope we're all happy and healthy when I see you January 23rd, and this meeting is adjourned.